I love it when a challenge comes from something that you're going through in real life. So can you believe that I was looking for a regular savings account? And I found it, tricky to work out which one would be the best for me. So I thought, why not make a prep and data challenge to break it all down and make it a lot more transparent as to what would be happening to money each month. So of course we've got the different providers, we've got their interest rates, how much money you can deposit each month maximum, and then we can see if some of them have additional conditions. So like for some of them you need to have been a member of that bank already for a certain amount of time or something like that. Okay, so to start off this challenge, we need to make this actually a numeric field, the currency that we have at the moment. So we just need to take away this pound sign and make it a numeric data type. So for that, I used a replace function as a calculated field. So just replaced that max monthly deposit, the pound sign, with nothing, and then made sure to change this to a numeric value. So just from the drop down here. For the provider, we're going to make sure that we update it so that we know if it has additional conditions or not. So that's just another simple calculated field that we can use here. So if that has additional conditions field equals y, then we're going to do the provider plus a little brackets conditions apply, just so that we have that information there. It also helps us to differentiate between the two Lloyd's products, for example, and then we can get rid of this additional field there. Okay, now we want to, so we know that we want to break this down for each month. So we're going to create a quick field that allows us to scaffold between 1 to 12, but because in the new rows field step we can't use numeric fields when we're going between two values, we need that to be actually a date. So we just create for a date to start on the 1st of January 2024 and another date that goes to the 1st of December 2024. So we're just doing, we want 12 months, so we'll just do a whole year. And why not choose next year for a bit of a change? And do our new rows step for the first month to the 12th month, and that'll do it for every single provider that'll happen because these are going across each of the rows. So we're basically multiplying our data set by 12, so we're getting 144 rows now. So you just need to make sure that you change your increment here to be month rather than day, otherwise we'll be getting lots of rows. We're not really going to break down the interest to a daily level. That would be quite extreme. And then from that we'll just change this month field that we had from our new row step into a numeric value. So when I tried to do this myself, just on the field that got created by the new rows step, so I tried to convert the dates to month number, then it gave me an error and my whole flow broke. So I reported that as a bug to the devs, so don't worry, that's in the background being sorted out. But if I duplicate the field first and then convert them via the drop down, so from the duplicate, then that seemed to work out okay. So now we have our numbers 1 to 12 for each of those. So we know this is month 1, this is month 2, this is month 3, so on and so forth. So just get rid of that other field, rename this one to be month, and we understand what we're doing. So now comes the tricky part. How do we apply that interest for each month and see it growing over time? It would be kind of easy using the compound interest formula to work out how much we'll end up with at the end, but how do we make that work for each month? So initially my thoughts were, I want something recursive to be able to work this out, but I can't have that, so maybe if I just do it manually. So, I pivot everything so I have a row for each month, a column for each month, and then I do 12 different calculated fields, which is what I did. And, it worked, but is that necessarily the best way to do it? So just each of them being like that first month field and then timesing it by the compound interest, or not even timesing it by the compound interest in this instance. I'm just applying one lot of the interest to this field, and then going for like the second month you just need to make sure you added 1 to 2 before you then added on the interest, and so on and so forth. I wrote that out 12 times to get to this end stage before sort of reshaping it a little bit towards the end. So that's definitely one way of doing it, very manual, very tedious. But then I figured out a smarter way after kind of talking it through with some people, bouncing ideas around. I kind of thought about it as if we think about that, say for example, £200 that goes into the bank account in month one, that basically is going to have interest applied to it for 12 months. Then in month two, the next £200 you put in it is going to have the interest applied for 11 months. Ah, okay, so we can just use that on a row by row basis. We don't actually need to interact with other rows to kind of work that through. So here's what that looks like as a calculated field using the compound interest formula. So multiplying that max monthly deposit and doing it multiplied by the power function here of 1 plus the interest over 12 to the power of how many months. So that does kind of mean that we think about this a little bit the other way round. So month one there is going to have just 1 month's interest applied to it, whereas month two is then going to have 2 months interest applied to it. Okay, so if we look, say for example, just for argument's sake, because I've been saying the 200 one, and select just the 8% one, why not? Just because it has the more dramatic changes. So we can see in month one that's had 1 month of interest applied to it. This one's had 2 months of interest applied to it. And then we can bring in the fact that obviously the value goes up each month by 200. So we can bring that in as well. Well, actually, sorry, we don't need to because we're going to do a running sum, aren't we? This is a complicated kind of way of thinking about it. But now if we do a running sum basically on what we just did, so that was on our apply interest field that we just created, then you can see that if we're using the months as the orderings, then we can see that this is taking into consideration a value of 150 that has been there for 1 month and a value of 150 that's been there for 2 months. And obviously if we add those together, then that will give us our interest or our total savings at the end of that month. Whew. It's a tricky thing to think through, but we can compare it to our kind of brute force method up here. So if I look, for example, at the NatWest RBS one, why not? Then I can see that those are exactly the same values as what I have in the other method. So it is working the way that we expect it to, which is great. Cool. And then to finish off the challenge, we're just looking at, we want a value for what are the maximum possible savings. So how much will I have at the end just as a field? So we're using an LOD just on that savings each month to do the max, because that running total will then give us the total value. The total interest, then after that point, we would just do that max possible savings minus the max monthly deposit times by 12. So how much money did we put in? How much of that then turned into interest? And then we just want to do some rounding of that as well, just so that it looks a little bit neater. And then we're doing a couple of rankings. So we want to rank both on the max possible saving and the max total interest that you can acquire. So those 2 ranks here, just based on those 2 different fields. We're making sure it's a dense rank, of course, because we've got like 12 rows for each of those providers. And I think it does get interesting at some point during this. So for example, the 8% one gives you much better interest than it would give you kind of like overall just cold hard cash. So it's not all just equal. So it is kind of interesting. And then the other thing I did is just do a sort for the output that I then hid. So that's all for this challenge. I hope that you enjoyed looking through it, and I hope that that logic kind of made sense. So thanks very much for watching.